this thing that is a supplement to your game, why don't you make that as short as you can and as simple as you can to get the best results possible, so it is coinciding with everything?
Welcome to Coach's Corner, presented by the Cutoffs Coffee podcast. Today, we have an awesome conversation with Concrete Pete, aka Coach Pete Christofferson from T3 Performance.
And today's episode is a little different. This is our first episode of Coach's Corner, where you get to kind of learn more from our T3 Performance staff. And we started off with a great episode here with Coach Pete. You're going to hear about jump training. You're going to hear about how he works with his volleyball athletes in the 10-foot club. So if you want to jump higher, if you play volleyball, this is a great episode to tune in and learn a little bit more about what we do here at T3 Performance with Coach Pete.
In these Coach's Corner episodes, we want to talk to and highlight the coaches that we have on staff at T3 Performance. And like James said, this is an awesome conversation with Coach Pete. We're going to talk all things volleyball and hear his journey. So if you want to hear a little more about him, stay for the rest of the episode. Also, if you like what we're doing on the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast, feel free to reach out. Find us on social media, YouTube. You give us a subscribe, follow us anywhere you listen to your podcast, and then reach out and let us know who you want to hear. Not only who you want to hear from the world of performance, but also which coaches you like at T3 Performance and you want to hear us talk to here on Coach's Corner. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Concrete Pete Christofferson. Enjoy the episode, and we will hear from you guys soon. Coach Pete, welcome to the show, man. How are you this morning?
Great. Appreciate you guys having me on. It's cool after seeing guys like, Jump Science Just Fly on here, getting to be a guest. And I stand on the shoulders of giants compared to guys like that. But I love to be on, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you saying that. It's funny because we have a lot of really elite high-level coaches at T3 Performance, and we need to do a better job of showcasing these coaches for who they are. I mean, we've got 98, 99% coaches at the gym that we talk to on an everyday basis and don't have the opportunity to sit down and record with. And you are going to be the first of many of these conversations where we, get to pick the brains of the coaches that we have actually working in the facility with the same athletes that we all see every day. And I think this is going to be really cool. And it's also going to be cool for listeners of the Cutoffs and Coffee podcast to see some of the coaches like you coming on and they're thinking, they're going to then realize that we have some pretty heavy hitters in the gym. So we appreciate having you here, man.
Yeah. And before we really
dive that's in, awesome.
I want to know, Pete, what are you drinking? What kind of caffeinated beverage are you enjoying this Sunday morning?
Here we go. Well, you caught me on a Sunday, so don't judge me. The red Solo Cup dishes are not done, but this is just straight stock cold brew coffee. I just shot it to the brain. I usually do my mornings a little fasted. I don't eat until I'm up for 3 to 4 hours, just so my brain gets cooking a little bit. I feel a little better that way. So yeah, everything's rolling. We're good to go.
Amazing. So let's get started with a little bit about your background. Take us through high school Pete and kind of share with us that moment that led you to decide I'm going to be a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah, absolutely. High school Pete was an athlete that was always trying to be better because he started sports very, very late. I'd say around 13 or 14 is really when I started to care about him. Because my just friends I knew were playing oh, you should come play football. You should come do track. It's okay, yeah, sure. But then that skill gap is gone because they started 6, 7 years old. I'm jumping in the game now. So I'm okay, maybe I can fill the gap with whatever the weight room stuff is. I never tried that. And I started to get more and more involved in that. And then once I realized I just sucked at sports more and more, I started getting more into the weight room, but I like sports. So I wanted to find that middle ground. And I think it was my senior year of high school. I was really just kind of lost. I didn't have bad grades or anything like that, doing too crazy, but I didn't really know where I was going in particular. And then I kind of just found my guidance counselor, thankfully, was just yeah, you can go into exercise science. And I'm I didn't know they had degrees for that stuff. I really didn't. And then I was yeah. So I found it. I went to Tri-C for a little bit and then got my degree from Cleveland State. I was able to intern a couple of great places and just kind of see everything in the strength conditioning world. But I think it was really just I kind of am someone who has to put all of their eggs in the one basket when I learn something, and it kind of discards a little information from my brain. I'm not the most naturally gifted brain person. So once I knew this was it, it's like, I'm finding people I want to learn from. I'm getting books, I'm reading stuff. I'm interning to get my hands on coaching as much as I can, working with the athletes. So it was pretty right away. But then the process just kind of showed me more and more, like whether it was good, whether it was bad, hardships, whatnot. It really just taught me early that this is what I wanted to do. And I've really dedicated my life to it, to where I think I'm in a good place now. So pretty early on, but I think I get reassured every day that I want to do this too, just from the things that I go through.
Yeah. And I think
That's awesome.
One cool thing that people might not know is that we shared the same weightlifting coach and weightlifting mentor. And that's how we met. Shout out to Reggie Hodges, the legend himself. One of the true weightlifting coaches out there. And unfortunately, I don't think he's coaching as much anymore, but that's where we first met, was just, meeting at the bar, throwing some iron around and just getting strong. Where were you at in terms of your career path when you ran into Reggie for the first time?
Yeah, so Reggie kind of caught me. When I first met him, it was more so when I was still kind of in the CrossFit path of things, just doing that for fun, seeing what that was about. And then he brought me over for some technical weightlifting stuff. He was kind of a link. It was like, come over, like work with some Olympic lifting stuff. And then he coached me up, told me, I'm like, okay, like I'm going to see CrossFit like never again. I'm just going to do this weightlifting stuff. And he stole me. As long as like career, I was kind of interning at one of the local high schools. And it was cool. Like they were doing a lot of Olympic lifting. I was learning Olympic lifting. Like I was able to transfer my knowledge over. So I was really getting a lot of good work at Brunswick High School over there. Shout out to Coach Travis Lombardozzi. He really helped me out getting my feet wet as far as coaching kids. I kind of just walked in the weight room, asked him like, can I help coach all these kids? And he's like, sure, I'd love to help. So right in the middle of that, and really getting to learn that coaching relationship with kids, trying to learn and trying to transfer it over to high school athletes, because they're different from college athletes, who are different from pros, who are different from the average people you see just wanting to work out. So that was the first dimension. But yeah, shout out to Reggie. He was really probably one of the coaches that made the complex things simple. Like that was something that I take with me every day. It's like, you want everyone to understand big things. It's like, you got to be able to do it in four words or less if you want to have a good career with simple people, but you also want to make your time a little more conservative and not be frustrated with them not learning. So it's on you if they don't understand the message. So right around that lines of learning that. So shout out to Reg, and yeah, that was a good place to start.
Yeah, and I think he was a guy specifically that made me realize how impactful verbal cueing could actually be. Because I know we talk about change the environment to change the behavior, but he was so precise and simple with how he would coach his athletes that he could make a change happen with one word. Because he knew what to say, when to say it, and how to say it, and he had that personal connection. So that was a fun experience we got to share together. Training under him.
Yeah, and he's also a guy who I would watch block power clean 400 pounds. Then 15 minutes later, after warming up, close grip bench 400 pounds. So I'm like, I'm gonna listen to you like as long as I can, man. Like that's kind of insane.
Yeah,
punter in the NFL as well, but it was just like, wow, okay, cool.
Hey, tell us about your professional career now. Like after the internships you're talking about, working with Reggie Hodges was also on, I believe it was episode 3. So very early on at Cutoffs and Coffee. So if you haven't heard that one and you want to hear a little bit more about Reggie, go back to that and listen to that. But that's kind of the connection outside of T3 Performance that all three of us have, learning from Coach Reggie Hodges. But Pete, once you got comfortable and competent and confident in coaching, where did your professional career take you after that?
For a while, it was kind of just trying to find that traditional path. It was like you intern where you can. So like I interned with, Brunswick High School, like I said, for a while, then interned with a couple of colleges, one that was local, one that was like a little bit more far away. Experiences were okay. So I'm just not saying the colleges. So, just kind of learning my way as I go. And it was very traditional. I was like, let me get my feet wet in these colleges, interning, and eventually maybe it works to a GA, like everyone tries to be in college and everyone tries to be a professional strength coach somewhere. I'm kind of a homebody. I like to stay local. So I didn't really know how I was going to feel about like moving across the country for some okay paying job. So it was kind of around then. And I had Nice little GA interview experience that kind of changed my outlook on strength conditioning as a whole. I guess I could just tell that story now. So I was interviewing for a GA job with a certain coach in a certain college, and I was excited about it. It was like, he's like, yeah, looking over your resume, I would love to talk with you a little bit. And I would just get on a phone call. Sure. I get on this phone call, and he kind of has me talk about myself, just give a general overview of who I was. And after all, I give out that whole thing. It's like, he's like, I can't actually bring you on. You're not ready. But I figured I can give you a call just to kind of give you some good tips as like how to build you up to get you to a spot. And at that point, I'm like, I get the sentiment, but that's also very condescending, wasting my time. So, he told me to read The System. He told me to read Periodization by Bamba, and he told me to either go intern at Ohio State or Alabama. And I am not kidding you when those were his information to me on how to get better in this industry. And I was like, okay, thanks for your time, whatever. I like hang up the phone. I like call my mom. I'm like, yeah, I don't really know like what this was about. Like, I don't know if this was it. And I had a moment where I'm like, do I really want to do this? Is these the people that I'm going to get involved with? So I look myself in the mirror a little bit. I'm like, there has to be others. There has to be different ways to go. So by the time my second internship rolled around, I went to a different college. It was like, I got offered a job coaching a couple of teams. They were going to be able to help me find a place or whatever. And that's kind of what they told me on the forefront. I didn't really understand like what kind of money I was going to be making. I figured it'd be low, but whatever. Come like a week before I was going to move in, they told me it was going to be a couple $100 a month to coach all that. And I'm like, what do you expect me to do? Like, where do you expect me to go? What do you expect me to, be able to pay rent, get food and all that? So, just seeing like what the ins and outs of colleges was, and keep in mind, and the second internship was a Division I college. It's not going to be a big name that's going to stick out to everyone across the country, but this is a Division I university that's going to put out there that that's what their standards are. That's what this is. So had to rethink a little bit of everything. And then I worked for a company that was before T3, and that was my first private sector job. And I had to make that decision now. It's like, do I really shoot down this line of the college strength conditioning route that, everyone talks about? It's a grind for a while before you finally make it. You got to suffer a little bit. Or do I just trust who I am at this moment and take a full-time paying job in my hometown? And I think it was a pretty easy answer once I really sat down and thought about it. And very thankful for those people as well. But now I've ended up here, and like I kind of just came to T3 because, I seen how the company was always expanding. I knew James already. And, I'm so very thankful to James forever that the process of getting a job was, hey, you guys need anybody? He brought me in. I talked with everybody, and then it was pretty smooth on the transition there. So the trust to bring me in like that is something I'm going to take to my grave, forever thankful for. So it was kind of just seeing where this industry goes and trusting at the end of the day, like, above all, where people go, what the setting is, wherever, it's like you are the one who's going to make it. So I had to really believe in that. I had to believe in me for the first time in a while. And, a little bit of a, imposter syndrome sort of thing kicked in. It's like, can I do this? And, now I'm writing these articles. Now I'm training the hundreds of athletes I am. And now I'm working with people like you guys. So I think that's where I'm at. The confidence is at an all-time high, and, hopefully it gets higher. I'm excited to see it.
Dude, I remember how excited James was talking about bringing you on also. I mean, I remember those conversations like so vividly. And from his track record, he's brought on a pretty decent amount of like really high level coaches. And I knew just you being in that conversation meant that you were going to bring a lot to the team. And like first day, first week, first couple of months, I remember just like this pretty immediate ascension of your career path and where you're at and the things you're going to be doing. And I was so excited to see where you were going to take it. And now to see where you're at with your role specifically at T3 Performance, dude, is so awesome. You're expanding a little bit into social media, been doing a lot of really, really cool things with jump training with our volleyball athletes. Let's talk about that. So now that you're here, you got like a really good roots here, not only in the city, but then also now at T3 Performance. What does like the day-to-day look like for you? And what are some of the things that you're doing in the gym that, they get you fired up and get you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, so day to day is very it shifts a little bit just because I have a lot of different training avenues I go through. So I'm still leading the program with Bay High School. I'm still doing that 3 days a week. Coach Grace is assisting me now, and she's done a great job like coming on and really working with that. So But yeah, doing there 3 days a week. That's Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So I guess I'm just giving my location out to the public here. So, but whatever.
We know where to find you.
But
Yeah.
yeah, sure, pull up. But yeah, 7 a.m. till noon. I'm coaching them throughout the day, and then depending on the day, my private training group, the 10-foot club, is going on Monday through Saturday. It goes for an hour and a half, and it's just a full comprehensive program for every volleyball athlete to come in and build a body that performs volleyball on a high level, but also can withstand the game of volleyball, which I'm very thankful for. I coach 2 other volleyball teams as well. Luckily, Rocky River and Magnificat Volleyball trusted us, so we're training them 3 days a week. And between all of them, I also have about 9 or 10 one-on-one clients that I've had for a decent amount of time. So I think I like the shift in the schedule every day. Like, not just like, okay, Monday's this, da, da, da. It's a little bit like that, but I can kind of makeshift my schedule to where like I can adjust things to make my life a little better. So I'm just seeing so many different kinds of athletes with different avenues. Like volleyball has really gotten to a niche of what I've been into, but I've gotten a lot of high jumpers as of late, a couple of soccer athletes, really just anyone who kind of wants what my quote unquote specialties are. I feel like I'm pretty well rounded as a coach to where like anyone can come to me and get better, but there are just some things that have really stood out to what I've been doing recently. So it changes day to day. I try to make my weekend as light as I can so I can do stuff like this, sleep in a little bit here and there. I'm kind of a night owl. So the summer hours in the morning have been getting to me a little bit, but that's the least of my worries. It's been really good. And the shift, like this has been the busiest summer of my career, and I'm just so thankful for it. This is the grind I've always wanted.
Yeah, and I think one thing that was a big reason why I always was like staying in touch with you and trying to get you on the T3 team was you had such a solid foundation and understanding of like the X's and O's of the training, but you also had the curiosity that kind of led you down the path of maybe jump training. And it was always kind of like questioning, like we question ourselves and what we do. And we're like, is there a better way? Is there more I could be doing for my athletes? What are some of those shifts that you've had because you're curious that have led you to the path of really like being in love with the idea of helping athletes increase their vertical? And then what were some of those things that have stood out and stood the test of time through your training?
Yeah, that just kind of goes overall to like why I kind of made that paradigm shift of my mindset to this job. It's like I think most people get into strength and conditioning, like, or at least it used to be when they see like strength coaches on the sideline, like super hyped up, like these are these jack guys, like on a football team screaming, like they'll do push-ups on the sideline for little celebrations. Like that's all cool, but like you ever helped an athlete like hit a PR in something and just see like how excited they get after? I think that is really something that made the shift of like, okay, like I don't want to do this job because like it's a free access to a weight room with my own personal training. I want to help people. I want to make sure that like the knowledge that I have can be applicable to anyone who comes to me for the expertise. Because getting the weight room into someone's life and teaching them it's a positive experience is probably one of the more rewarding things I've ever had. I have athletes who love the weight room who come in and just want to crush it. They want to do big deadlifts, squats, blah blah blah. I also have athletes who come in the weight room that know it's a part of the process and absolutely hate it, but they're respectful and they know it's a part of the job and they go through and they know it'll get them better anyway. And I think I know I have respect for them, either or, whether no matter what your goal is. So helping in regards to that, I think it's just that's kind of where my career has gone, is shooting for that. When it looks to jumps and just jump training, I kind of got into it like after when I was like really done competing in Olympic lifting. Like, I really ran that course and like I enjoyed the sport, but I just wanted to train a little bit more well-rounded. It was like just kind of like, okay, like I've never really tried to jump before. Where am I at? And then I had a jump mat. My first jump ever on it was like a 30.5. And then like the coach that I was with at the time was like, so you've never jumped before? I'm like, no. Is like, how bad am I? And then it ended up being pretty good. So now I pushed the envelope a little bit with that. And I think it was cool because like Olympic lifting was a really good base to where you have like that strong leg base of strength. And then Olympic lifting itself is kind of just like strength, speed, strength. So you're switching that over. Even if you're not doing jumps, you still got that twitch a little bit. And then the training for it, that's kind of why I think I train so much and train so hard, even if it's kind of like a sacrifice to my own personal time, is like I'm Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, but I'm also the monster itself. Like I'm trying to do these things that my athletes are going through to get them better. Cause like I was never a good athlete. And then some of these things helped me get to be a little bit better, even in, as my time goes, like as like, my older age compared to my athletes, it can help them. They got these fresh bodies that work. So really just trying everything. And like, there's so much information out there. It's like, you got to get strong, getting stronger will help you jump. Extensive plyometrics became a thing for a while. Like, you got to do those. And everyone learned about French contrast in a matter of 2 months. It's like, you got to do all these things. They're all going to work, man. But you got to understand is the timing of everything, what an athlete really needs. You have to look at the individual basis. And a pet peeve of mine is really like, how many of these things can you throw at an athlete at once? It's like, you have all these advanced training methods, but you have to learn what the minimum effective thing is, because something that you do in your life is only the most potent it's ever going to be one single time. You only have one chance for it to be the most life-changing stimulus of their career. So why are you going to take this 14-year-old and throw them through a French contrast thing with band assisted jumps and try and change them to be an Olympian right then and there? Like, why don't you, how much can you really squeeze out of the basic fruit as juice wise, if that makes sense? You got to get everything you can out of these little things. So you got to really dry up the basics with me for a while before I think you're ready for those things. And, that's what athletes should want. I know it's appealing to do all these crazy things, but like, an athlete's time is so valuable with all they have to do. They have to be a student. They have to be an athlete. They have to be a family member, a friend. You need time for other things. So this thing that is a supplement to your game, why don't you make that as short as you can and as simple as you can to get the best results possible, so it is coinciding with everything, instead of me thinking that the hour you spend with me every couple of days is the most important time in the world. So to answer the question, I would say that I want to find the funnel of, the bottom of the pyramid is the basics of where you need to jump and get a little bit higher. If that's a specific goal, this can go for everything too. But it's like, what one thing is the lowest hanging fruit that we can attack for so long until you've gotten all the juice out of it? And then you go a little higher. And then what do we need to do to get you better until you're this really high level athlete to where we can really nitpick and get into that specificity range. So I hope that makes sense. I know I just kind of rambled off a lot of stuff, but a little bit there.
No, that's awesome. What talk us through that process a little bit, right? You get a group of, let's say, new volleyball athletes who have a base of, let's say, intensive plyometric training from the sport. They've got a little bit of knowledge of like body awareness and positioning from the sport. They've got a little bit of awareness of that like lower level extensive plyometric training from the sport, right? Like, what are some of the things that you introduced pretty early on that you've seen get quicker, better, more efficient results before you get into the, let's say like the different type of stuff, the new, the sexy, the cool type stuff? Where should they start just by looking at their sport from just sport training when they get going with you?
Yeah, well, my first check mark for any volleyball athlete, it's going to come to me, is we have to make sure that full range of motion throughout all kinds of planes is going to be not a problem. Like, I think just going like, forward and back, side to side, being able to do these movement patterns that we're going to do in the future, like the full range of motion squat, being able to do a good hinge pattern RDL, how does single leg movements look both forward and back and side to side? That may not be a big performance shoot up covering those gaps, but I guarantee if one of my athletes can do all of those movements with a decent amount of weight, maybe even just like, do good squats with a 30-pound dumbbell in their hand, RDLs with a couple dumbbells in their hands, and then a goblet hold with various lunges and various planes. If they can do that, I can guarantee they're less likely just to get hurt than another girl. Like, we throw out that cover ground of strength coaches can't, prevent injury over and over again because we're trying to cover our ass a little bit when someone does get hurt. But the fact of the matter is that, if we didn't believe that, then like really half of what we do is gone. So I'm a true believer that like, if we can be strong and resilient and really just be able to put our body in space against external forces that come through, you're going to be safer. It's just natural that like, if you can move with a little bit of outside difficulty better than somebody else, I think your chances of being healthy are better. So we have to look and see if all those range of motions are good. And that's through my general assessment anyway. Like, it's pretty simple. I'm going to make sure you can move laterally forward and back and just sit up and down with good weight. So I know there's nothing really there. What maybe there's like some lower back butt wink, as they call it, when they sit in a squat. Maybe they dip their chest a little bit, and I see little things like that. I'm not going to shoo them away, but I can make notes of it. Like, this girl could use a little bit of strength here. We could work on this a little bit here. So I'd say the range of motion is a very good first thing to get under their belt. Now, when it goes to jump training, I think I like to expose my athletes to a lot of different kinds of jumps and different kinds of things. Versatility and variability is a big part of my training. I recently dived big into Daniel Bove's book, Takeoff, which is a book that I recommend anyone read if you're trying to get any information better out of jumps, even if you don't have force plates. He really just talks about components of the force plate, of like, you look at the graph of like, the decel of a jump, and then, the rise, the takeoff, pushing in the ground and everything. And he looks at training into each individual thing. I've really been able to make like jump categories out of myself, or excuse me, for my athletes based on that. But the biggest thing is kind of the extensibility and the relationship with the ground that, volleyball athletes are going to have, because they really just think about that approach of just like taking your steps, putting your foot in the ground, rising to the net, or at least if you're a front row player, but really just pushing, getting up and hitting the ball. But there are so many side-to-side interactions that have with each other on the court, whether it's your little pre-hops that you're going to take before your approach, your lateral movement that you're going to have to get to, and those quick movements that back row players that are usually lower to the ground, that quickness they need is going to be there. And sometimes they just don't really know what kind of forces the push. Like, you're not going to have to give this full step explosive movement if you only need to move about 6 inches to your left. You want it to be quick and fast, but if you give everything to that little movement, you're dead on the next play in a couple of seconds. So kind of just taking intensities up and down various, like, okay, this movement here, we're going to do like if we're doing like pogo hops in a 10-foot line, in a 10-yard line, let's say, I can up intensity. It's like, hey, today our hands are on the hips. I don't want height. I focus quickness off the ground. Another day it's, hey, I want height. Swing your arms, get up there. Like, we're going to really push it. So the relationship with the ground, understanding where you are, where you need to push, and how to do it is a big thing. And that's where other stuff like seated box jumps, where you're working propulsion more so, where you're just seated, not really swinging, you're just strong pushing into the ground. That's that push as hard as you can relationship. And then we go to band assisted jumps. It's like, okay, this is that get what you can without spending a lot of time on the ground. Very low contact times, but quick switch of that stretch reflex. So understanding and making these girls and guys, because, guys play volleyball too, heads up, making sure that, both of them kind of understand when and where these things will happen and why you're doing everything, of how quick, how much, and how quick and fast are the same, but just really all the variables of a jump that can happen and why you're training them all. That's huge, because then they'll start to put their time into each variability, and then that ground relationship they have will make more sense, and you just build a more robust athlete. Because volleyball is so interesting. I fell in love with this sport because it's one of the only sports outside of track and field that's very linear in the results that you get in the weight room can apply. Like, a well-rounded volleyball athlete is going to be able to move in all these different planes, have this certain level of conditioning, unlike a track athlete. But I guarantee you, if their vertical jump gets better, their performance is going to get better, because they really rise in such a high level of a physical output to where their skills are all going to get better. And that's a little bit more for like the tall, front row girls who are hitting and everything. Back row players are going to be a little bit more, those are defensive specialists a little more. So they are in charge of really just getting the ball after a serve or getting the ball after a hit and just making sure the pass is good for the setter. They're usually the shorter girls who are in the back, who are a little bit better at getting low to the ground. So, but jumping is for everybody, and if their explosive ability is going to get better, they'll get better as well. But yeah, I would say just making them understand why we're jumping the way we do, why we do different things, and then getting that relationship with the ground, as I keep saying, that better with their brain and their body, is just going to go such a long way for making them understand training and just building their bodies up overall a little bit better.
Yeah, I think jump variability is huge. And I don't know if we either do a really good job of it or other people don't do a great job of it. I kind of get lost in between, because I only see what we're exposed to seeing every day. But I love jump variability. I think it's like somewhat the secret sauce of improving vertical jump. I kind of, in my brain, it's jump variability and max effort jumps, right? So I think those are two boxes that need to be checked on different days, on the same days, however you want to do that. But then I think about, you talked about a little more when it comes to almost like position specificity. Is there any difference in your mind between training somebody who's, let's say, back row and front row, or should these athletes just focus on building up general capabilities of like speed and strength and jump training? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, so I think the younger an athlete is in training age, I think the more general things can be. Like, some of my younger girls who train with me, like maybe in like the 11 to 14-year-old age range, like their programs can look the same for a little bit because I'll cover all kinds of bases. Depending on how many days you're going to come and train with me, I'll cover a little bit of everything. But once you start to really get that higher level and you get specificity, it really does change a little bit. Like, for like the hitters, they're up front, they're going to need to get vertical. They're just going to need to get up in the air quickly. Like, if you're a middle blocker whose job is specifically to block for the team itself, you have less steps and less momentum to take. So you need a little bit of that standstill jump, right? Like you're not going to be able to get all those steps into it and, to get your approach for the hit. So you're going to need to really get up a little bit quicker with a little bit less time. So that's a little bit more of a demanding job. And that's why those players are usually the tallest players in the team. They don't get up as high necessarily, but they don't have to. They're already, pretty much a tower in the middle. Now, for the outside hitters that are kind of in the middle a little bit, you're going to really need to be able to build momentum into it. And that's kind of the biggest thing that was really taking into jumps. Like I've never played volleyball myself. I wish I had the opportunity. There was no teams around me when I was younger. And, like I said, I was a poor athlete anyway, so I probably wouldn't have been good. But I think the biggest thing is learning the approach jump technique. And a good example of that, I'm lucky to train two very good boy volleyball players that are good in the area. We were testing our pre-summer metrics just on the approach jump. And, I can jump at this point. I'd like to say I think I put my hat in the ring there. We did both their standing and their approach with a 3-step. So these guys are both 6'3" and 6'4" respectively. And I don't know what the reach is. I have to measure that. But, when they hang their arms, they're lower than mine. So I know the reach is longer than mine. So from a standstill, I have the same standing vertical reach as them. Granted, I'm shorter and whatever. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm competing with them. And then when it comes to the approach jump, they blow me out of the water by 6 or 7 inches. And, they don't have better weight room outputs than me. They don't jump higher in the jump mat than me, but they're able to take 2 to 3 steps and get absolutely flying in the air compared to what I can do. And that's just the history of doing it. And that's just a history of technique and really learning how to use momentum in a forward bound. Because like the approach jump is so cool because it's all forward and then you have to change that all into up faster than anyone in the world. Maybe high jump is a little bit of that regards, but high jump doesn't have the same emphasis on 2 feet in the ground, big arm swing, just get up to find the point contact of the ball. So the approach jump has become very interesting to me. But I'm sorry, I kind of went on a tangent. What was your question to start this?
No, dude, that's great. I was asking just a little bit about specificity when it comes to positions. Because again, I don't have a super broad understanding of the sport of volleyball. I love watching it and think it's insane and know there are respect like a ton of the high level athletes who do it. I just don't know personally the difference that you would take when approaching a front row and a back row. Again, just from the variation of jumps that they have to have, or even the lack of jumps that some of the positions do.
Yeah, that's right. And then we're looking at the front row players like middle. I talked about those and the outside hitters a little bit. Luckily for the back row girls I work with, if you're going to train the vertical jump really in any regard, you're going to get more explosive in most of these planes, right? As long as you're working the other movements, like that's where our lateral movement's going to come in because all of these players are going to have to get in that low defensive stance at some point, unless like, they take them out and switch and rotate players. But just having low lateral hip mobility and just being able to get in those positions is very good. And then once I want to be a little bit more specific for them, that's where like horizontal jumping comes in. Testing the broad jump can be a good, thing. I know, it's not the up like people are going to expect in volleyball, but if you can push forward with good explosive ability, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to have a raw output to get far to the left or far to the right. Now, the ability to stop and decel on a time or on a dime like that is going to be a little bit different. And that's where kind of microdosing the speed and agility comes in. For my girls, we don't necessarily have like large training blocks developed for speed, for agility. But, at the end of their warm up, we're going to throw in some kind of variation because I need them to see that, I need to expose that. And, with 4 to 5 sprints or small change of direction drills, like a day or twice a week, you'd be surprised. I throw flying tens at my girls all the time. We see PRs pretty consistently. And granted, I don't test it too crazy, often, but I get girls faster all the time. And if their numbers aren't really jumping up in that, if they're getting stronger and jumps are going up, but speed is around the same, I think I can trust that we're getting a little bit spring in those ability. So for those back row girls, I want to make sure that range of motion is good in those lateral, abilities, like I said. But then we start to look at some agility stuff like jumping side to side, being able to laterally bound. If there's like a 5-yard gap, maybe no, that's a little too far, 3 to 4 yard gap, and a girl can laterally bound and kind of sink and jump back and forth pretty good. I have good faith in her abilities to put force into the ground, but also rebound that force back into a better position. So, they're kind of like, if you're a defensive player in volleyball, you're kind of designated to just really doing, one thing most of the time. So it can get a little bit specific, but a well-rounded athlete for them is going to be very important. And, full range of motion squats, if you're playing those positions, you better be able to sit your butt all the way to your heels and get back up with a little bit of weight on your shoulders. So that's a big thing for them. But yeah, luckily they can be trained with the same explosive intent as the front row girls, but I'm going to look a little bit more at how well do you move side to side and how well do you move in a low position at a consistent speed. I think those are some differences. Luckily, at a young training age for high school, everything's going to work a little bit. Don't tell any of my competitors that. It's all general a little bit, but we can start to look at some specific things to get there. And I think those are big key components for me.
I think one aspect that you kind of talked about when you were discussing the flying tens, which I really like about you testing the volleyball athletes in that, is like a well-rounded training program. The unintended outcome is going to be improved flying tens, but you're not changing what you're doing in the weight room to like, all right, we're going to go in a 12-week cycle to really get those flying tens down, right? It's more of like, hey, the training's working. We don't really do a lot of intentional training for the flying tens, but our numbers keep getting better. And you don't make the test, right, what you're training for. It's just something that you do to check, all right, is this working? All right, how is it working? And is that helping the athletes, like light bulbs go off in terms of buying into the program that you're running? So you have the flying tens that you test, you have your approach jumps and your jump mat that you use pretty regularly. What are some of the other like data points that you like to look at for the athletes that you're working with?
Yeah, those are my big ones. And I'd say for numbers wise, those are my main ones. I'll really look at the jumps and everything. We're getting a little bit more into RSI testing, which, I like a little bit. It's kind of hard with the jump mat because you have to kind of make up a metric number a little bit and kind of like get them to understand what it is. So that middle ground's getting there. But I think a lot of the things when I'm looking at like weight room, it becomes more qualitative for me than quantitative. Like, I love good, like big squats and deadlifts for my girls and, even upper body metrics, that's fantastic. But, if two squats with 135 pounds on your back can look so different from athlete to athlete, person to person. There are some with their chest all the way to the floor, their hips up. That's not really this knee over thing you're looking for sometimes. And there's others that are just like, perfectly upright, sitting back. So, I have standards that I want for a little bit of everybody. Like, I'm not going to have two movement standards for girls be the same. Like, we talk about those different archetypes. Like, I have girls who are 5'4" that are playing volleyball, and I have girls who are 6'2" playing volleyball. So how can I hold them all to the same exact thing? Of course, I hold the standards of, show up, work hard, give me intent and everything I tell you. But as far as what I want your movements to look like over time, it's going to be a little bit different. Some of these girls have like femurs that are twice as long as their actual shin bones. So sitting low with a nice tall chest and getting all the way down for a squat might not be super valuable to me, or might not be super valuable to her. So I kind of have certain metrics for the girls. I don't necessarily tell them this all the time. So but certain movements I'll look at as their main KPI of qualitative movement versus others. Like, if I know a girl is a little bit better built for a hinge than a squat, it's like, okay, are we building steady strength in this? Maybe not in a 1 rep max sense, but a sense is like, was this weight looking like this a couple months ago? Was she able to maintain that rigid torso while actually moving her hips back and getting length in hamstrings with this same weight? And I'll record as many videos as I can, even though, the girls hate me recording lifts of them for sometimes, but it's a good qualitative look. And then other girls, it's like, okay, you are someone who squats well. Are you able to sit down with a nice upright torso, get your knees forward, and then come back up? Or do you suck at squatting, but do you like it for some reason and going to force me to make you squat more? Okay. So then as we're going to look the same in our posture, same in everything we're doing, and up in the weight a little bit. I'll keep track of it. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think I'll ever have a college scout come up to me and ask me like, hey, like, she seems like a really good athlete. What's your Wonder Max hex bar deadlift? If that ever happened, like, I'll get us all like shots of whatever you want. But I just don't think it's going to happen. And so, from strength standpoint, like, keep numbers in mind. Like, you want them to get strong to a certain point, whether that standard for yourself is 1.5 to 2.5 times body weight, whatever. That's definitely what I'm diving into. That next article I was talking to you a little bit about CT was like, where do we all sit on that? Like, what does that even mean? I want them to be strong, but I want them to also be able to, move qualitatively with external forces being there. And that's also another metric too, is that like they have their one movement or maybe two that I really make a KPI form in my head. How many of these things that I tell you to do can you actually do? Are you able to really pick up these movements and get back to it? Like if we've done a huge block of, let's say we did a whole block of like front squats for like literally weeks on end. And like, that's something that I usually do, is like really start them off with a movement. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, let's switch to back squats for a little bit. And we go back and forth. How interchangeable are you to be through these movements? Because a lot of the times, like, these movements are the same fundamental pattern. Like, you'll feel it on your shoulders versus feeling it on your back, but like your nervous system doesn't know whether you're front squatting, back squatting, pushing your truck up a hill. It doesn't matter. So are you able to really just be resilient enough to where maybe with a week onboarding, of a movement, are you able to really make this transfer over? So how adaptable are you to outside circumstances of physical outputs? Can I make that change for you? And when they're so young, that can be a little bit of a tricky game, because you want consistent pillars of their training. Like, if a girl's brand new to training with me, it's not like I'm going to switch up their squat like every couple of weeks. That would just be crazy. But like, let's do different kinds of rows. Let's do different kinds of accessory variables that, challenge your positioning in your body. And then once your big pillars of movement, squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, blah, blah, blah. Once all that's good, then I can start to add a little variability to that. But like, let's get strong in certain things we have, but let's also get strong to where stuff I throw at you and stuff I program for you, there's less time to adapt to it and actually be proficient in it to where it's going to help you. So answering the question a little bit, those are my hard, concrete numbers when it comes to jumping metrics, things that I'll put on their performance enhancing, like, data card, if you will. But as far as the weight room goes, like, let's make this a quality thing to where I think the outside forces of the world that are going to come out you are not going to be too much of a thing, because you're a strong girl or guy. I keep saying that, but if you're strong, you're strong. And I think let's be adaptable in that circumstance as well.
I'm interested, Pete, in what you've done in building this program culture wise, because all the videos I see online, unfortunately, I don't get to see it as much in person, just being in a different location, but there are a lot of athletes working hard, giving you intent, being consistent. Have you done things intentionally to build a culture around the 10-foot club and the program, and ways that you want it to run, and are happy when you get to step back as a coach and see everything going on and say, you know what, this was done intentionally. These athletes are helping each other and spotting each other and coaching each other. We've done all this stuff intentionally. Or is that just a natural thing that happened when you get athletes who have similar things that they enjoy, whether it be either the volleyball aspect that brings them in or the weight room and the hard work aspect that brings them in? Or what are you doing intentionally to like build the culture around the 10-foot club that has taken it to the next level where it is now, and ultimately going to probably be the thing that takes it to the next level from here? What are some of those things look like for you?
To be honest, the first thing, I think the one thing that's going to set apart, I think, what I do, and that, like, I'm not going to say that like other coaches are not very nice to the people they coach, but I think once I started asking more girls how their day is going, I think I started building a better program. I think I started really making something that was like, hey, you see all these strength conditioning programs all across the country. It's like, it's very like concise. It's very militant in a way, like where they're going to get after them. It's like, gotta do this, gotta do that. And there's room for that. There's room for structure. There's room for structure, and we need to be able to keep them to a standard to where if you're here to work hard and you're here to get better. Like that's your number one goal. But why can't they take their little break in between sets for a minute or two to get water and show each other something on Instagram? You know what I mean? Like how much am I going to take myself seriously to a point to where like I'm going to make this the hardest thing they've done of the day? Granted, trading is hard, but why don't we find that balance? Just making sure that they're sorry, I just want a little power off my phone. Just making sure that the time that they're spending is enjoyed, and making sure that they make it a positive process. Like I feel like if you like going somewhere, you're going to go somewhere more. I'm not sure, I don't know where, if I read that anywhere or I just kind of took a life experience for it. So a lot of the times it's like, they'll go to weight rooms and like, it's like, there's like 40 people in there and they're just, coaches like barking at them and stuff. It's like, I try to make each girl understand that she's a part of it. Like, even if I have 17, I'll make sure I'll talk to each of them at least once for a couple minutes and make sure I'll catch them in a day. It's probably more than that just because I follow them around the weight room and try and yap their head off a little bit each day. But, we have this nice understanding now. It's like, you're going to work hard here because, at the end of the day, you're coming to me outside of your general day-to-day thing because you want to get better. So if you came to me and you didn't get better and didn't put in the work, like, we can look at your attendance, how many days you're coming a week. We can look at all these things that you're doing. That's easy enough. But like, I got to make sure that this is also not the most miserable experience of your life because, if someone's forced to get there, it's going to be a chore. Otherwise, it's like, I'll ask the girls every day, like, when are you coming in next? When are you going to see me? And they're like, oh, I'm so busy this week. I don't know. Like, I promise I'll come in here. Like, I'm going to, and then I see them. It's like, okay, like, this isn't a chore for you. Like, you have expectations from me, but you're also know it's for you. And you also know it's not the worst thing you're going to do with your day. Like, you got to talk to these kids. And, I think that's where my disconnect with general normal strength conditioning path goes, is like I didn't feel like the connection was truly there. There's probably a lot of great college strength conditioning coaches that build really good relationships over time. I'm never gonna doubt that for some coaches, but it just wasn't the avenue for me. And then I kind of made that difference here, is that like, I can make the weight room a place for girls just as much as guys can. And like, I coach boy volleyball players, and this is not just, saying outing boy volleyball players. They're fantastic too, but it's a guy's world in the weight room. It's always been. So why don't I try and change that a little bit? And why don't I try and let them understand that this is a place for them? Maybe it's a different context, a different coach, but with me, you have someone that's going to be in your corner that's positive, that's going to help push you through all the way. I won't let you slack. I'm going to get on you a little bit about things like that that'll come by, but you can trust me. And I think that's the first thing that I try to build. Even before I build their back squat, why don't I build their trust first?
Bro, those were really good points. So even you mentioning that was funny. I remember when we had Tim Riley on, a while ago on the podcast, that's one thing he said. He said, well, I always ask them how they're doing. And it was like, for some people, it's like this mind blowing, like scenario, but for you, you're just doing it because you're you're a curious guy and you're interested in how you can make this session a great session for your athletes. We see it all the time with younger coaches and with interns. And again, this is kind of on my mind. I talked about it a little bit. It's on my mind because we've got a pretty good internship group going right now, but I talked to them about just filling the space in the warm up, instead of saying, okay, 10 squats. And then it's that, right? It's just empty air. It's 10 squats. Hey man, how was your day yesterday? Or how was your day at school? And kids are like, oh, this is something that we can talk about. Right. And then it like opens this line of communication. It kind of like evens the hierarchy a little bit from like coach to athlete. Right. So they don't feel like they've got to, be super, like you said, militant and structured around you. And it gives them a little more freedom and it lets them be a little more comfortable. And it seems like if you look at their entire day, they're always told what to do, where to go, how to do it, what time to wake up, where to sit in class, what to eat for lunch. And then they get this opportunity where they get in front of you and they get to talk a little bit and they get to laugh a little bit. And then they get to spend some time with their athletes and, with other athletes who have similar goals. And it's just so cool to see what actually happens when you allow yourself to build a culture like that, where it's a little more relaxed in the warm up and athletes can talk and joke and have fun and can laugh. And then they can also switch it on when it needs to be switched on. Right. And that's a really awesome thing for you to do as a coach. And I think sometimes the individuals who are naturally outgoing that just kind of goes past us a little bit. But that's awesome that you brought that up, because that is, I think, such a big point, is let's just see how they're doing. Let's ask how they're doing. Let's see, they might share something with us and how we can improve our training session that we would have not had any idea if we were stuck deep into the weeds of the programming. If it was going to be my Hatfield squats are 4 reps, or they're six reps today, right? It's like way bigger than that. And that's so cool to me that you said that, because I think that's so powerful, especially when building a program that you are building that is slowly expanding. It's like there's something you're doing to have success. And it might even be that, just like talking to them as human beings and seeing how they're doing, and then be able to kind of like stack things moving forward from there. That's cool.
Yeah, being a people person goes a long way. I'd imagine that's pretty universal. Be nice to people. Weird little thing you could add to your game that helps. I promise.
Yeah, and you even said, you were like, yeah, I'm sure there are D1 coaches that do it, and I'm thinking, I'm like, dang, I never had one. You know what I mean? Like in the 5 years I was at school, like never once did somebody ask me that. Right? What I did get was, why are you not wearing team issued shorts? That was one thing that I remember sticking out, but never was it like, hey man, how was school?
Yeah.
Because that would have thrown me completely for a loop. And then we meet coaches like James and Ryan and these other coaches from T3 Performance, where they actually like are asking you questions during your day, right? And not asking about the stats that you had in the game, but more asking like, what did you do on the weekend to like reset your brain? You're focusing on this football all the time. What have you done to be able to relax? It's like, oh, well, I like these TV shows. I like these movies. I like these conspiracy theories. I like these eating and diet styles. And then, you get in these situations where you actually understand who the person is and what drives them to be better. And then you're able to like unlock that next level. And I think that's so cool that that's something that you just like, that you keep in mind. What is your training look like? As we talked about jumping a little bit, you're kind of past those Olympic lifting days. Do you have goals? Do you have things that you're working towards? Things that you're testing out to try to use for athletes? Or are you just like training to train, which I think is important too? What's your stuff look like?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I can hold off my athletes from catching me as long as I possibly can at this point. So
that's the truth.
So, and it's switching day to day, because like, my training schedule, or training my athlete's schedule is different so much anymore. So I kind of, it's hard to find like a training sprint that I like. They all work, but like, you got to find something good. And then, I really started looking at kind of the work of, there's like a lot of high-low stuff from like Charlie Francis, that's something stuff. But if you ever read anything by James Smith, the thinker, he has a really good book on how to organize training, kind of combining like Charlie Francis stuff with like West Side, blah, blah, blah. But he basically said like, look, like it doesn't have to be as concrete as upper, lower, push, pull, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I usually like on a Sunday or Saturday, or if I try and write my training in like 2-3 week blocks, because that way I just like I know what I'm doing every week and I'm pushing a little bit. I get way too bored after like 2 weeks, and I want to like change it up. I get bored after like doing something for one day. Like I'll do like a hex bar deadlift and be like, yeah, that was good. I can push that for a couple weeks, and I'll come back in. It's like, all right, maybe I want to RDL. Actually, I kind of just lied to myself. So I have a problem in that sense, but I kind of just write everything I want to get done throughout the week, and then pick, like, I just star the days that I know I can train. It's like, okay, let's fit things here. Like, what are the physically demanding things? Spread those out. What are the non-physically demanding things? Spread those out. And then it's like I could do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. I could do a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. I don't know. Like, and I think that's been cool because, like, my body's kind of ready for anything, any day. Like, maybe it's a rest day, maybe it's a training day. It's really good, So, and that's added a little bit of knowledge to me, because like really just not fixing myself to a style has been so good. It's really shown that I can like really make up like any kind of training split I want, as long as I'm adhering to the physiological things we know from training effects, and we do it good. So that's been really good. As far as like what I'm training for, I'm always trying to jump a little bit higher at this point. I think that's the physical output I've really like shined in. So I'm really just trying to get out there. I want to see, maybe I can hit that 40 on that jump mat. Maybe I can finally dunk a basketball and stop being a little baby. We'll see. We're really coming along, but if I can get always a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger along the way, like I train concurrently all the time. Like I never really drop anything. I probably could get better if I really long-term periodize myself, like really cut some stuff out for a little bit, really worked other stuff. But like that's kind of the the little Achilles heel of this is like, we tell athletes all the time, like, this is only a part of your whole thing. This is part of a bigger picture. For me, it's like, dude, I just do this for fun. So I just want to kind of do everything all the time. And it's like a giant playground at this point. So it's like, I just have fun with it, but I try and keep a little structure and try and structure things and push things a little bit week to week, just to see where these things go through. For a while, it was like, I'm going to follow 75% one week, 80% another week. And then or I go through French contrast cycle. It's like, it's like, well, what kind of stew training can I make today? And how can I do with it? So it's pretty random, but also my training is like a river, to where you have a river flows in an open a channel, where it's going to go, but the water can do really whatever it wants in the middle. That's kind of how my training goes.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that. And I have kind of a final question here to be able to kind of tie this all up and wrap this stuff up. But what does the future look like for you? We talked a little bit more about diving into the writing thing. You got published before, which was awesome. So let's touch on that real quick. But what's the next step in your career that you're looking to develop? And, what's the future of you as a coach look like?
Yeah, I think I really took the biggest step for myself in the past 5 to 6 months, as far as where my business and everything has advanced. I'm going to add as many athletes as I can. I just want to help people. I just want to make sure that if you think that I am the person with my knowledge and expertise that can help achieve your goals and take you a little farther, I want to be able to get you some help. Whether maybe my books are full as far as training goes, that I feel that way for the first time ever, which I'm very thankful for. But whatever I can do to help people, I'm going to really make sure I can get information out there. So I really want to, expand upon my, my 10-foot club, get as many girls in that as I can. I really want to, take the high school I work with. I want to get their performance to the next level. My individual athletes, I want to get them as high level as I can. I really want to just do as much research as I can. I always feel like when I learn a little bit of something, I'm missing something else. And I'm always I'm just on the cusp of something. I'm just getting there. So a little bit more research and really just diving in. And I'm also just trying to find new things to write about. Writing has been really a passion. My works for Simply Faster and both the JVA, the Junior Volleyball Association, has been such a good thing to really get my confidence up. I have an article posted on the same website that Usain Bolt's trainer posted on. So that's pretty cool. And I'm just some nerd from Ohio, so go figure. But really, just trying to get a little bit better and professionally everywhere. I can't even really say where I'll be a year from now. I plan on being with the company for, as long as humanly possible. But as far as what my day-to-day looks like, I think that's why I like this so much. It could be different. You'll never know what you expect. And whatever challenge comes my way, I'm just going to go at it full throttle. And hopefully, all the athletes that come to me get a little bit better in whatever they need to get better at. And they just, enjoy their day when they come across a path with me. That's hopefully what it looks like.
Absolutely, man. And people who are interested in keeping up with you, interested in linking up with you, if they can't get to you in Avon at T3 Performance, how can they connect with you? Where on social media can they find you?
Instagram's the best. Concrete Pete 18. I've been rolling with that since high school. Shout out to my buddies who gave me that nickname. But yeah, that's just it. I got all my stuff in my link tree in my bio, and yeah, shoot me a DM if you ever have any questions. Literally anybody hearing this, you just want to chat about stupid stuff, just DM me. I'm here, so don't worry about it.
Heck yeah, man. We appreciate you coming on, dude. Sunday version of Coach's Corner. So, we don't always record on weekends. So thanks for, being flexible and getting us in. For everybody who listened and stayed for the entire conversation, thanks so much for checking us out and for listening. And again, if there's anything you want more from Pete, reach out to him on social media. Also, man, if you're, in the greater Ohio area, come check him out at T3 Performance in Avon. But again, this has been Coach's Corner presented by the Cutoffs Coffee podcast. We ask you to do 3 things at the end of every podcast. Number 1, please continue to practice gratitude. Number 2, tell the people that you love them. And number 3, we got one life to live. You might as well live this life stimulated. We will catch you guys on the next episode. Have a good one.